The crash of splintering wood and shattering champagne glasses silenced the Belmont Country Club. My husband's shoulder slammed into Naomi's chest, driving her backward into the towering mountain of baby gifts. 50 guests gasped in absolute horror. A man had just tackled a woman who was 8 months pregnant. But as Naomi hit the floor, her $1,000 silk maternity dress tore open down the side. There was no blood. There was no tragedy, just a thick block of yellowed memory foam and heavy black Velcro straps tumbling onto the polished hardwood. The entire room froze. People covered their mouths in shock. I stepped over the ruined ribbons and shattered glass. I reached down and picked up the foam belly. It weighed practically nothing. Naomi stared up at me, her face pale, her chest heaving. I dropped the fake stomach right onto her lap and leaned in close. "You called me Barren," I said, making sure every single person in that room heard my voice. But at least I never faked a pregnancy to steal a foster kid's newborn. "My name is Jolie. I run a daycare center downtown. I spend 40 hours a week surrounded by laughing toddlers. But coming home to a perfectly silent house still felt like walking into a graveyard. 6 months before the country club disaster, I suffered a devastating miscarriage. The nursery door stayed shut. My body was still healing, and my mind was barely holding together. Exactly 6 months to the day I lost my baby, my younger sister Naomi called a family dinner to slam a plastic stick on the table and announce she was pregnant. She did not do it out of a sudden maternal urge. Naomi was 30, chronically unemployed, and treating her wealthy boyfriend like a personal cash machine. He was literally packing his bags to dump her that same week. She needed a chain to keep him tied down. She faked the positive test to trap him into an engagement and lock down his bank accounts. But a lie like that comes with a hard deadline. She desperately needed a physical, breathing baby by month 9 to secure her luxury lifestyle permanently. To pull off a scam that massive, she needed a distraction. She needed the entire family completely emotionally derailed, so nobody would ever ask to attend doctor visits or demand official medical records. I became her convenient smokescreen. She used her pregnancy to psychologically torture me. She demanded I plan and pay for an ultra-luxury baby shower. When I hesitated, telling her I was too exhausted and grieving to throw a party, she scoffed right in my face. "Look at you," she sneered across our mother's kitchen island, sipping her sparkling water. "Do not act like my baby is a burden just because your own body is broken." She gutted me right there. They broke me then. But today, I am the one holding the hammer. I refused to pay the catering bill. Naomi immediately weaponized our mother, playing the ultimate victim. Mom called me sobbing, begging me to just support my sister and write the check. It was not until later I discovered the real reason behind my mother's absolute panic. Naomi had already bled her dry. To fund Naomi's fake high-risk, out-of-network specialists, our mother secretly drained her entire $85,000 retirement fund. She swallowed massive early withdrawal penalties. She even signed a second mortgage on her house just to keep Naomi's lies funded. My mother willingly financed her own destruction. They pushed and manipulated until I finally swiped my credit card for the venue deposit, just to stop the relentless phone calls. I thought paying for the Belmont Country Club would buy me some peace. I had no idea it was the exact stage I needed to end her reign of terror forever. We were in the private bridal suite at the Belmont, 45 minutes before the guests were supposed to arrive. Naomi lounged on a velvet sofa, admiring her professionally manicured nails. She picked up her tablet, unlocked it with a quick tap, and tossed it across the glass coffee table toward me. "Set up the ultrasound slideshow on the main projector," she ordered, waving her hand. "And make sure the lighting makes my skin glow. I want everyone crying when I walk in." She handed me the loaded weapon herself. Her arrogance blinded her. She was so deeply convinced of her own superiority. She assumed she had safely closed all her digital doors. I picked up the tablet, I tapped the Photos application, and swiped past a dozen generic ultrasound pictures she had clearly saved from random internet forums. Then, a calendar notification dropped down from the top edge of the screen. "Destiny. Hospital shift change. Tomorrow morning." My thumb froze over the glass. The air in the room thinned out. My lungs burned. Destiny was an 18-year-old foster teenager who occasionally volunteered at my daycare. She was 9 months pregnant, completely alone in the world, and due any day now. I tapped the banner. The tablet snapped into her synced notes application. A massive, meticulously color-coded schedule filled the screen. Naomi had tracked every single one of Destiny's prenatal appointments. She had logged the teenager's daily bus routes. She had mapped out the county hospital's security camera blind spots. She even had the exact names of the maternity ward nurses working the overnight rotation. I swiped up to view her open background applications. The web browser was running with a dozen tabs she had forgotten to close. An invoice for 3 stage-quality silicone pregnancy bellies with Velcro straps. A rush delivery confirmation for a hospital-grade infant car seat. step-by-step digital guides on forging state birth certificates and applying for emergency foster placements. My hands started to shake. The metal backing of the tablet pressed cold against my palms. This was never just a simple grift to trap her wealthy boyfriend into marriage. This was not just a sick psychological game to drain my mother's retirement fund and mock my recent miscarriage. Naomi was actively hunting. She was stalking an isolated, vulnerable teenager. She planned to walk into that maternity ward tomorrow morning, slip through the chaotic shift change, and walk out with a stolen newborn. She needed a physical baby by month 9 to secure her lie, and she was fully prepared to rip one right out of a desperate teenager's arms to get it. "What is taking so long?" Naomi snapped, adjusting her silk maternity dress in the mirror. "Hurry up." I locked the screen. I shoved the device directly into my purse. The financial scam was over. The kidnapping plot was officially on the clock. 50 guests tapped their crystal glasses with silver spoons. Naomi stood at the center of the room, beaming under the spotlight, rubbing her perfectly round stomach. She grabbed the microphone and called my name. She demanded her big sister come up to the stage and deliver the opening toast. She wanted me to stand in front of our entire family, swallow my own grief, and bless her twisted lie. I walked up the stage steps. The wood groaned under my heels. I took the microphone from her perfectly manicured hand. I turned to face the crowd, held my chin high, and gave a single nod to the technician at the back of the room. The massive 200-inch screen behind us blinked to life. There was no slideshow of baby clothes. There were no sonograms. The projector mirrored the tablet screen in blinding high definition. It displayed the invoice for 3 silicone pregnancy bellies. It showed the digital cart containing a stolen hospital badge. Then, the screen flipped to the color-coded stalker logs tracking an 18-year-old girl's bus routes and maternity ward shift changes. The cheerful chatter died in a fraction of a second. 50 people stopped breathing. The silence in that room grew so dense it pressed against my eardrums. My mother lowered her glass, her hands trembling so violently the ice rattled. Naomi spun around to look at the screen. Her fake, radiant smile snapped right off her face. The innocent mother vanished, instantly replaced by a trapped, feral predator. She spun back toward me. Her eyes went completely dark. She snatched the heavy, steel ribbon-cutting scissors off the presentation table. She let out a guttural, terrifying shriek and lunged straight at my face with the blades open. I stood perfectly still. I watched the sharp metal rushing toward me. Before she could cross the gap, Jared cleared the stage in 3 massive strides. My husband dropped his shoulder and drove his body squarely into her ribs. The brutal collision sent them both flying backward into the towering display of baby gifts. Cardboard crushed. Ripping paper echoed through the dead, silent room. The sheer force of the impact ripped Naomi's silk dress violently down the side seam. The heavy Velcro straps binding her waist snapped under the pressure. A thick, yellowed block of stage-grade memory foam spilled out from under the torn fabric. It hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud and rolled slowly to a stop right at my mother's designer shoes. My parents stared down at the block of foam. Their faces turned the color of wet ash. They finally understood exactly what they had paid $85,000 to protect. Any normal person caught with a block of stage foam strapped to their waist would have surrendered. They would have run, hid, or begged for mercy. Naomi weaponized her humiliation instead. She dropped heavily onto her bare knees. She buried her face in her hands and let out a blood-curdling, theatrical scream. Then, she pointed a trembling, manicured finger directly at my chest. "She is lying!" Naomi shrieked. Mascara ran down her cheeks in thick black lines. "She hacked my tablet. She is jealous because her body is broken, and her womb is empty. So she wants to kill my baby." She clawed at her torn silk dress, dragging herself toward our parents, begging them to protect her. It was a terrifying masterclass in narcissistic delusion. Even with the Velcro straps completely exposed, even with the foam belly sitting right there on the rug, she demanded the room ignore reality and pity her. My mother backed away from her like she was radioactive. The country club manager signaled the front desk. 2 uniformed police officers breached the double doors barely 3 minutes later. Naomi fought the arrest. She thrashed, kicked, and spat, screaming that I was the real criminal, right up until the steel handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. They dragged her out of the ballroom. I went home that night and locked my doors. My shoulders dropped for the first time in 6 months. I genuinely thought the nightmare was over. I completely underestimated the power of an enabler's wallet. By 6 o'clock the next morning, Naomi's wealthy boyfriend wired the cash and posted her bail. He bought her freedom because admitting he had been conned into marriage by a psychopath was too massive a blow to his fragile ego. He drove her straight out of the precinct. Naomi walked into the morning light with a singular, terrifying objective. She refused to accept defeat. If she could not quietly steal the teenager's baby, she would use the government to take it by force. She drove to a corner convenience store and bought a disposable phone. She dialed the state emergency hotline for Child Protective Services and filed a priority anonymous report. She gave the operator Destiny's exact room number at the county hospital. She claimed the 18-year-old was actively using crystal meth in the maternity ward. Finally, she logged into the state registry and flagged her own profile as an available, licensed emergency foster parent. She built a flawless bureaucratic trap. The state would seize the newborn the second it took its first breath, and Naomi would be waiting in the parking lot with open arms. My phone vibrated against the kitchen counter. The caller identification flashed Destiny's name. I answered, and her terrified, breathless voice filled my ear. A social worker was standing in her recovery room, threatening to take her newborn baby over an anonymous narcotics report. Naomi thought she was a mastermind. She forgot she was dealing with a licensed daycare director. I handle Child Protective Services protocols for a living. I grabbed my keys, flew out the door, and broke every speed limit getting to the county hospital. I marched straight into the maternity ward and bypassed the front desk. I found the assigned caseworker standing outside Destiny's door. I flashed my state-mandated reporter credentials. I demanded they cross-reference the incoming number of their anonymous tipster with the registered emergency foster parent application filed that exact same morning. The caseworker tapped her screen. The 10-digit numbers matched perfectly. The entire fabricated narcotics charge evaporated in an instant. We walked out to the visitor parking garage flanked by 2 hospital security guards and 3 local police officers. Naomi sat in the passenger seat of a black luxury sport utility vehicle parked right near the exit gates. Through the windshield, I spotted the stolen hospital-grade car seat strapped into the back. Her wealthy enabler boyfriend sat behind the steering wheel, nervously tapping his thumbs. The police cruisers blocked the exit. Lights flashed across the concrete walls. The boyfriend rolled down his window. The lead officer leaned in and listed the accumulating federal charges: forging state documents, filing a false report, attempted kidnapping of a minor. The color drained out of the boyfriend's face. He turned his head and stared at Naomi. The absolute, psychotic reality of her fake pregnancy finally cracked through his thick skull. This was not a desperate woman trying to save a relationship. This was a predator waiting to steal a human being. He unbuckled his seatbelt. He pulled the keys out of the ignition and threw them directly at Naomi's chest. "You are completely insane," he screamed, his voice cracking. He shoved his door open, scrambled out of the vehicle, and sprinted toward the pedestrian stairwell before the officers could even ask for his license. Naomi sat completely alone in the dark leather seat. The officers pulled her out and slammed her hands onto the hood of the vehicle. The cold steel cuffs clicked shut for the second time in 24 hours. There would be no bail hearings this time. Destiny held her beautiful baby girl safe in her arms. My sister traded her silk maternity dresses for an orange jumpsuit, and my parents sat in their quiet, empty house, drowning under an $85,000 second mortgage they could never afford to repay. The heavy oak gavel came down exactly 3 months later. The judge stared down from the bench with absolute disgust in his eyes. He sentenced Naomi to 18 years in a maximum security state penitentiary. She will not even see a parole board for 12 long, miserable years. The court also slammed her with a mandatory restitution order of $95,000 to cover the cascading identity theft, the fraudulent credit lines, and the staggering emotional damages inflicted on the hospital staff and Destiny. The bailiff stepped forward. They ordered her to stand. The fallout for my parents was absolute and completely merciless. You cannot keep a scandal that massive, hidden in a quiet, manicured suburb. Neighbors whispered behind their hands in the grocery store aisles. My mother's Tuesday evening book club suddenly stopped sending her invitations. The social exile was swift, but the financial ruin was permanent. To survive the $85,000 second mortgage they took out to fund Naomi's psychotic lies, my parents had to put our childhood home on the open market. They sold the beautiful 4-bedroom house at a massive loss just to avoid total bankruptcy. They moved into a cramped, dark 2-bedroom apartment on the industrial side of the city. Their blind loyalty cost them their stellar reputation, their comfortable retirement, and their peace of mind. They paid the ultimate price for raising a predator and calling it love. Exactly 8 months into her sentence, a thick yellow envelope arrived in my mailbox. The return address stamped in the corner belonged to the state penitentiary. The handwriting across the front was unmistakably Naomi's. The ink loops were perfectly curled, precisely like the elegant invitations she forced me to buy for that lavish country club baby shower. I slit the top edge open. She covered 3 full pages, front and back, in cramped handwriting. The very first paragraph blamed me for everything. She wrote about how hard the prison routine was, how the cafeteria food made her violently sick, and how our parents were completely abandoning her by refusing to answer the prison payphone. She actually wrote the words, "I am still your sister, and blood means you owe me a second chance." She demanded I deposit $300 into her commissary account by Friday. My pulse stayed completely steady. My hands barely moved. I folded the thick yellow pages right back along their original creases. I walked over to the home office, turned on the heavy-duty paper shredder, and fed the entire letter right into the steel blades. The machine hummed loudly. The paper turned into meaningless white confetti. I wiped my hands on my jeans, turned off the light, and walked into the kitchen to make dinner. The silence in my house finally belonged to me. These days, my weekends look completely different. Our backyard is loud, chaotic, and full of genuine warmth. Jared stands at the grill flipping burgers while the neighborhood kids run screaming through the lawn sprinklers. Destiny comes over every single Sunday afternoon. She brings her beautiful baby girl, who just learned how to pull herself up and walk by, holding onto the edge of our wooden coffee table. Destiny is enrolled in the local community college classes, studying late into the night to become a pediatric nurse. We built a brand new family out of survival, mutual respect, and actual unconditional love. It is messy, and it is loud. But there are absolutely no hidden agendas. There are no fake smiles masking sinister intentions. There are no steep price tags attached to our affection. The contrast between my vibrant, noisy living room and the sterile, terrifying perfection of that Belmont Country Club could not be sharper. When you survive an attack from a true narcissist, the hardest part is rewiring your own broken brain. People exactly like Naomi do not possess the biological capacity for genuine guilt. They only feel overwhelming pity for themselves. They view the complete devastation they cause as a minor, unfortunate inconvenience to their own selfish goals. If you are watching this video right now, and you recognize a Naomi hiding in your own family tree, you need to understand 3 undeniable rules of survival. Rule number 1 is the boundary of blood. DNA is a biological fact. It is a scientific accident of birth. It is absolutely not a free pass for ongoing abuse. Society constantly conditions us to forgive unimaginable cruelty, simply because the person sitting across the holiday dinner table shares our last name. You are entirely allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. You owe absolutely nothing to a predator, even if you share a mother. Rule number 2 is the staggering price of enablement. Look closely at my parents. They wanted desperately to keep the peace. They chose to pacify a monster rather than confront her. And it cost them everything they spent their entire adult lives building. Keeping the peace with a toxic person makes you the direct financier of their cruelty. Your silence is the exact currency they use to destroy innocent people. Rule number 3 is the ultimate revenge. When someone betrays you that deeply, the primal instinct is to scream. You want to tear them down. You want to make them hurt the exact same way they hurt you. True revenge is completely silent. It is exposing them to the cold, hard light of the truth, closing the door permanently, and walking away without looking over your shoulder. The absolute greatest punishment you can ever inflict on a manipulative narcissist is living a beautiful, thriving, radiant life that they are completely and permanently locked out of. I am Jolie. My home is safe. My mind is quiet. Have you ever kept a monster in your life just because you called them family? Are you ready to change the locks? Let me know in the comments. Why did Jolie even agree to pay for that country club baby shower in the first place? Why did her parents blindly hand over $85,000 without ever seeing a single, verifiable doctor's note? It is so easy to judge from the outside. Is it not? You watch a train wreck like Naomi and think you would have walked away on day 1. But let us pause for a second and unpack the actual psychology and the financial traps hidden inside this nightmare. When you are dealing with a toxic family member, you are not dealing with a normal relationship. You are dealing with a casino. Psychologists call this the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. Naomi did not just torture her family every single second of the day. Every once in a while, she probably offered a crumb of hope, a fake smile, a rare compliment, or a fleeting moment of acting like a loving sister. And just like a desperate gambler pulling a lever, Jolie and her parents kept pouring their emotional and financial coins into the machine, praying for the jackpot of a normal, happy family. They were not stupid. They were addicted to the illusion of peace. But Jolie eventually woke up, and she executed 3 brilliant moves that you need to memorize if you ever find yourself in the crosshairs of a manipulator. First, she used the audit strategy. Scammers absolutely hate details. Naomi drained $85,000 for invisible, out-of-network medical specialists. The moment a toxic person demands massive sums of money for an emergency they will not let you verify, you become an auditor. You ask for the invoice. You ask for the clinic's name. If they explode in anger, play the victim, or accuse you of being unsupportive, that is your giant red flag. Anger is a manipulator's ultimate defense mechanism against an audit. Second, she focused on building the case. Jolie did not just stand up on that stage and call her sister a liar. She used the projector to expose the digital paper trail. When she found that unlocked tablet, she secured the receipts, the silicone bellies, the shift logs, the forged documents. If you are going up against a narcissist, your tears will never save you, but your screenshots absolutely will. You must document everything. Finally, let us talk about the buyout. Look at the parents. They bought into the lie because confronting the horrific truth about their daughter was too painful. They literally financed their own destruction with a second mortgage. Sometimes, cutting a toxic person out of your life feels like a massive loss, but in reality, it is the ultimate buyout. You are investing in your own freedom before they bankrupt your soul and your savings account. Here is the verdict. DNA does not come with a lifetime pass to abuse you. Trust is earned through consistent, honest behavior, not owed just because you share a bloodline. Jolie survived because she finally stopped playing the slot machine and started protecting her life. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to use the audit strategy on a toxic friend or family member? How did they react when you finally demanded the receipts? Drop your story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more real talk. And remember, protect your peace and protect your wallet.